The gas explosion sent me and my husband's white moonlight, both gravely injured, to the operating table. His white moonlight panicked, suffered a sudden heart attack, her life hanging by a thread. To save her, my husband of 7 years, Ethan, tampered with the records and personally murdered me, then ripped my heart from my chest. His hands were stained with my blood, yet he shed 2 fake tears, murmuring, "I'm sorry, I'll repay you in the next life. Pity me, mother and child dying a gruesome death." And his white moonlight, having received my heart, was given a new lease on life. Deeply touched, she accepted his proposal with great fanfare. With overwhelming resentment, I descended into hell. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the moment my husband ordered the anesthesiologist to administer the sedative. My last memories from the previous life were of the cold blade piercing my skin, the near-fatal pain of my heart being ripped out. Through my blurry vision, I had caught Ethan's 2 tears. His hands covered in my blood, he had muttered, "You're already so badly injured. It's better to leave your heart for Clara." I opened my eyes anew. The shockingly clear vision stunned me for 2 seconds. "Ready for surgery, you can administer the anesthesia now." Ethan's voice pulled me back to the chaotic world. I hadn't died. I was back to the day of the explosion, when I was critically injured and wheeled to the operating table. The anesthesia hadn't been administered yet. There was still time. I tentatively moved my limbs, and a tearing pain instantly engulfed me. I clenched my teeth, doing everything I could to stay conscious. "Hazel, you're awake?" Ethan met my eyes, a hint of surprise and panic flashing across his face. But quickly, he regained his composure, placing a hand on my shoulder and gently reassuring me. "Don't be afraid, Hazel. I'll be your surgeon, and I promise I won't let anything happen to you." I looked at him, a coldness in my gaze. "No, I want to transfer hospitals." Ethan's face showed shock, clearly not expecting me to say such a thing. "What nonsense are you spouting? The surgery is about to start. Don't be foolish. It's my body, I make the decisions, and I want to transfer hospitals right now," I repeated through gritted teeth. "Miss Hazel, please calm down. Dr. Ethan is your husband and the head of the hospital. He won't let anything happen to you." The anesthesiologist walked forward, speaking gently. "It's because he is my husband that I'm requesting a transfer or a different surgeon," I said coldly. "With that kind of relationship, if his emotions are too high during the surgery and it causes failure, what am I supposed to do?" "This," the anesthesiologist stammered, unable to refute. "What are you messing around?" Ethan's hand tightened on my shoulder, causing me to gasp in pain. "Time is of the essence. You're badly hurt. We can't delay any longer." He evaded the anesthesiologist, leaned down and whispered in my ear, "Many were injured in this explosion. I specifically assigned you to my care. Even Clara, As if realizing something, he abruptly stopped talking. But I knew what he wanted to say. He wanted to say that he had even put Clara aside, so what more did I want? But his choice was solely to obtain my heart. I coldly pushed away his hand. "I don't want you to perform the surgery." In my past life, I had trusted him too much. I was happy that he chose me in a critical moment. I believed he would never hurt me. So I believed everything he said, even the organ donation form he had me sign. Wait. At this time, I had already signed the organ donation agreement. That's why Ethan was so anxious. After all, his white moonlight was in the operating room next door, waiting for my heart. I looked at Ethan, my gaze filled with icy intent, my mind rapidly searching for a solution. "Hazel, let the anesthesiologist administer the anesthesia first. Your condition really can't wait." With that, Ethan gave a signal to the anesthesiologist, who nodded knowingly and slowly approached me with the injection. Panic instantly surged through me. I was like a fish on a chopping block, completely at their mercy. My heart rate accelerated, and my breathing became rapid. In this extreme fear, I was paralyzed, my entire body stiff. "Ethan, why was there an organ donation agreement in the documents I just signed?" I asked him suddenly. "Organ donation?" The anesthesiologist looked at Ethan in surprise. Ethan froze, a flicker of darkness in his eyes. Then, he looked at me with feigned realization. "So you regret signing the agreement?" Ethan sighed helplessly. "Organ donation is up to the individual. If you regret it, you can tell me. and you can request the hospital to withdraw it. But Hazel, this is a hospital. No one is going to harm you. Please stop overthinking, and let's start the surgery, okay? The anesthesiologist unconsciously added. Miss Hazel, are you suffering from paranoia? Ethan quickly shook his head at him. I froze, my face pale, my hands clenching tightly, my fingers digging into my skin until blood seeped out. Ethan is truly a skilled doctor, a master of deception. He could twist his conspiracy into a narrative about my supposed mental instability. All right, Hazel, we really can't delay any longer. They both began to approach me. Was I going to die here again, even after being given a second chance? No, I refused to accept my fate. As the anesthesiologist came closer, I used all my strength to push him away. Then, with swift precision, I grabbed the scalpel from a nearby tray and held it to my own neck. Open the door, let me out. I stared at Ethan, my eyes filled with coldness. Or tomorrow's headline will be about the unscrupulous doctor who drove his patient to death. The violent movements caused my wounds to tear open again, and blood spurted out. The excruciating pain made it difficult to stand. The atmosphere became tense. Ethan's expression grew increasingly agitated, but he quickly regained his composure. He took off his gloves and pulled the anesthesiologist back. Hazel, please stay calm. Don't hurt yourself. Then he pointed at the gurney nearby. I agreed to let you transfer hospitals. Please lie down and we can wheel you out, okay? You are seriously injured. Don't cause further harm by moving around. What do you say? Ethan's act would convince anyone that he is a good husband. But I alone knew what kind of demon was hiding behind this gentle facade. If I laid down on the bed, they would not hesitate to sedate me. I pressed my back against the wall. The burning pain from the friction brought beads of cold sweat. But I dared not move a muscle. I was afraid that if I lost my strength, I would not be able to save myself. Minute by minute passed. Ethan became visibly impatient. After all, his white moonlight was in danger of dying if she didn't get a new heart soon. Ethan's eyes flickered, and he began his attempt to manipulate me. Hazel, stop making a scene, please. Your current condition is serious. You need surgery right away. If not for yourself, then at least consider me. What am I going to do if something happens to you? I looked at him, my heart heavy with sorrow. His profound affection was just another part of his plan to make me die. Ethan, if you truly want what is best for me, then open the door and let me out. Then I looked at the anesthesiologist. Doctor, let me be clear. There is no way this surgery will happen today. If you insist on arguing with me, I'll just slit my throat. Think about your family, think about yourself. Do you want to live the rest of your life with this karma? Without waiting for an answer, Ethan immediately agreed. Fine, don't get worked up. I'll open the door right away. He rushed forward and quickly opened the door. I breathed a sigh of relief and, clutching the scalpel, stumbled out of the operating room. Good heavens, what's happened to her? The people around me were startled by my bloody appearance, shouting in alarm. Where's a doctor? Someone help her. This young woman is severely injured. A nurse was also shocked, hurrying to support me. Miss, I'll take you to a doctor. I shook my head, declining her help. Hazel, stop. Ethan's voice suddenly rang out behind me. Panic washed over me. I pushed away the nurse and, gritting my teeth, picked up my pace. But before I could take a few steps, the man behind me had caught up. Ethan stopped in front of me, blocking my way. Hazel, please listen to me. Your health is paramount. Let's start the surgery first. He looked at the crowd gathering and, with a sigh, abruptly knelt in front of me. This is a hospital, no one will harm you, believe me, please have the surgery first. Your injuries really can't wait any longer. What's going on? Why has the doctor knelt before the patient? What's the relationship between them? The crowd murmured in confusion. Ethan ignored them, just pleadingly looked up at me. The anesthesiologist caught up, and hearing the crowd's questions, he sighed and murmured, This is Dr. Ethan's wife. She has paranoia, and she's refusing medical care. A buzz went through the crowd. No way, is she watching too many dramas? This doctor is so pitiful. He even knelt down to save his wife. The people around began to look at Ethan with pity, and at me with blame. If you're sick, get treated. Why are you torturing people? Look, she's still holding the knife. How scary. People like this should be put in a mental hospital to stop them from tormenting such a good husband. My mind went blank. I looked down at Ethan. The way he was looking at me was filled with darkness and calculation. Do you want my life that badly? Hazel, please just listen to me, please. Ethan reached out to grab my pant leg, pleading. As long as you let us treat you, I'll do anything. Yes, girl, stop making trouble and listen to the doctor. He's your husband, how could he hurt you? People around me began to try to persuade me. A feeling of helplessness and bitterness washed over me. Tears began to fall like broken beads. I cried to the surrounding people. You don't understand. He just wants me dead. At that moment, Ethan suddenly lunged forward and snatched the scalpel from my grasp. Quick, come help me. The nurse and anesthesiologist rushed to my side, pinning me down and dragging me towards the gurney. I struggled frantically, my fear reaching its peak. Let me go. Ethan, let me go. I kept writhing and yelling. Hazel, stop being difficult. Your injuries really can't wait any longer. You're my wife. I can't just stand by and watch you get hurt. I looked at Ethan with hatred. If I stay beside you, you demon, that's how I'll truly go to hell. A strong survival instinct made me grab onto the hand that Ethan held the knife in. Hazel, are you sure you want to keep wasting time? Ethan looked at me. A trace of ruthlessness showed in his eyes. I froze before I could figure out what he meant. I felt the hand that I was holding jerk, and then the blade changed direction. Ethan, what are you? Before I could finish, I stared at him in horror, my eyes wide with terror. Hazel, no. Along with Ethan's alarmed cry, the scalpel pierced deeply into my left eye. Ah! Blood gushed out from my eye without stop. I covered my face, rolling on the ground in excruciating pain, and screaming with all my might. The people around scattered in terror. Blood, she's losing so much blood. Oh my God, the scalpel is in her eye. Hazel, are you okay? Ethan scrambled to my side on his hands and feet. His hands trembled, hesitating to touch me, as if afraid of hurting me more. But the way he looked seemed like a demonic monster who wanted to devour me. I kicked him away, my body trembling as I crawled backward. Stay away from me, don't touch me. Ethan looked at me, his face full of hurt, as if he had been deeply affected by my behavior. Hazel, how could you distrust me like that? He dropped to his knees, his eyes red. You can do whatever you want. I'll do anything, just please stop hurting yourself. Hazel, I beg you. Ethan's appearance quickly attracted the sympathy of the people nearby. Even a few young women who were watching began to cry at the sight of him. Dr. Ethan looks like he's going to break. It's so heartbreaking. I don't understand, how could such a good doctor end up with such a crazy wife? I would burn incense if I had such a great husband. What's she whining about? I bet it's because Dr. Ethan spoils her too much, which is why she has too much free time and thinks of such ridiculous things. They were lost in their own opinions, mercilessly attacking me. The throbbing pain intensified, ravaging my entire body. I had no strength left. Slowly, I let go of my hand covering my eye, letting the warm blood flow unchecked. No one could save me. No one could help me. I was truly useless. I hadn't been able to save myself even with a second chance. Ethan. In my despair, I chuckled softly. You won. Take my life. My consciousness began to fade. My eyelids became increasingly heavy. It seemed like I was going to die here today. How unwilling I was. Hazel. With effort, I opened my right eye to look at Ethan. I wanted to mock him, but I didn't expect that he would hug me. His voice laced with panic. I know you don't trust me, so I've asked other doctors to save you. You must hold on. With my last bit of strength, I looked at him in disbelief. Well, what did you say? Ethan carried me forward, his face determined. I said I've asked other doctors to save you. Hazel, hold on. When I woke up, I found myself lying in a hospital room, surrounded by the faint smell of disinfectant. The scalpel wound in my left eye. The random wounds on my body had been dressed and bandaged. The sun was bright outside, as if the world was free from darkness. For a moment, I almost believed everything that had happened the day before was just a nightmare. Until Ethan pushed the door open, stood beside the bed, his eyes red as he stared at me. Hazel, you're awake? Is there anything that hurts? Our eyes met. He apologized to me in a flustered and helpless tone, said that he hadn't done well, hadn't given me enough security. He said he would change in the future. Hazel, please get better soon, okay? The cold light of the room illuminated his slightly tired face. Seeing him, the memories flooded back, along with the sharp pain from yesterday's stabbing and the fear of dying, all returned to my body. Finally, the memory of him saving me came into focus. Ethan? I turned my head, looking at him, my feelings a confusing mess. Why did you save me? Because you are my wife, Ethan answered without the slightest hesitation. He squatted down, gently taking my hand that was lying outside the blanket. I closed my eyes. Countless past scenes flashed through my mind like a broken slideshow, a fragmented movie. Given a second chance, I couldn't understand Ethan anymore. In the past life, he hadn't even frowned while ripping my heart out on the operating table. He was so afraid I'd die too slowly and delay Clara's heart transplant. He wanted me dead so desperately. Why did he save me yesterday? It couldn't be that he suddenly regretted it. I turned my head looking at him and asked, "What about Clara?" The grip on my hand tightened sharply. After a moment of silence, he spoke, "Hazel, don't overthink it. The most important thing right now is to get you treated. Paranoia is just a mental illness. As long as you cooperate with the treatment, there is a chance of recovery." My mind went blank. At that moment, I finally understood what Ethan's plan was. You didn't save me yesterday because I'm your wife, but to send me to a mental hospital, right? I used almost all my strength to pull my hand out of his. My confused thoughts began to clear. Yesterday, I made such a big scene that you couldn't blatantly kill me on the operating table anymore. So you used my actions to your advantage, let me out, and made me show my hysterical and terrifying side to the public? I carefully examined Ethan, as if I were meeting him for the first time. Because in a mental hospital, even if I die, it would be reasonable, right? Ethan's face turned deathly pale. He looked at me with complex emotions, his lips moving slightly. Hazel, why are you overthinking again? And I didn't mean to. Of course you meant to. A hoarse voice sounded, and when I followed it, I saw a pale face appear at the door of the ward. It was Clara. Our eyes met and she smiled at me, her eyes filled with pity and smugness. Why don't you tell her, Ethan? We've been planning this for so long. Isn't today the day we've been waiting for? Looking at the two people in front of me, my thoughts gradually returned to the past. The beginning of my story with Ethan was also in a hospital. 5 years ago, I was hospitalized due to illness and shared a ward with Ethan's grandmother. Because Ethan was very busy, he was rarely seen. I would always try to take care of his grandmother. After doing it many times, she always held my hand and wouldn't let go. Such a good girl, be my granddaughter-in-law. At first, when Ethan heard such words, he would always ask his grandmother not to talk nonsense. He was always polite to me as well. Until that time when he helped me organize my medical reports. It was from then on that his attitude towards me changed 180 degrees. Over time, his grandmother would always complain to me, "That silly boy likes you but is embarrassed to tell you." She glanced at Ethan, who was eavesdropping not far away, and shook her head. "You're such a disappointment. If you don't drop the pretense, you'll never have a girlfriend." It was from that day on that Ethan started pursuing me. Holding flowers, carrying cakes, this 6-foot-tall man would kneel down in the street to tie my shoelaces, acting like a docile golden retriever. I was busy with work, and sometimes he would wait downstairs for 3 or 4 hours without a single complaint. At that time, Ethan was already a rising star in his industry, young, handsome, and rich, with many girls who liked him. No one would have imagined that when he pursued someone, he would be as shy as a teenager just beginning to understand love. It was this sense of contrast that made me delighted and quickly fall into love with him. At the end of that year, Ethan made his official confession. He took me to watch fireworks, and at the most magnificent moment in the night sky, he looked at me with sparkling eyes. "Hazel, give me a chance to take care of you." I threw myself into his arms, saying yes with happy tears. After we were together, Ethan indeed took good care of me, just like he said he would. The cover of his social media was my photo, our pictures were in the car, and he would video call me when he went away on business. Despite his busy work schedule, he still insisted on cooking for me every day. We continued like this for 2 years before walking down the aisle. After we got married, he never changed. At that time, I was immersed in happiness, thinking that I had the best husband in the world. Until the moment before my death in the previous life, I learned that his sudden change was because he had seen my blood type. It was the same rare Rh-negative blood type as Clara's, and one of the essential conditions for a heart transplant is the same blood type. It was as if a thunderbolt had awakened me. I came back to my senses, looking at Ethan and murmuring, "So even our beginning was full of lies and calculations? What else?" Clara seemed very pleased with my current pain. She stared at me without blinking, and after a long moment smiled faintly. "Hazel, give up. You have no chance of turning things around." "What do you mean?" I stared at Clara, asking the question. She curved her lips, took out her phone, scrolled on the screen, and then threw it in front of me. Picked it up. The top post on the trending topics on Weibo was displayed on the screen. It was a revelation from a well-known influencer. This person was one of the young girls in the crowd who had sympathized with Ethan yesterday. In the video of the revelation, I held a knife like a madwoman, glaring at Ethan fiercely. My bloody appearance made me look even more horrifying. And Ethan knelt on the ground, his eyes red, constantly begging me to treat my injuries first. The influencer detailed what she had heard and seen. She made it sound as if I had paranoia, not only imagining that my doctor husband was trying to kill me, but also stabbing my own eye in madness. Finally, she declared indignantly in her post, "I sincerely suggest that people with mental problems should stay in mental hospitals for treatment, so they don't come out and harm others." I opened the comments under that post. They were all unanimous in condemning me and sympathizing with Ethan. Oh my God, if I encountered a wife like that, I would want to die. Dr. Ethan is such a good man. He's still staying with his wife even though she's this crazy. Sob, so sorry for Dr. Ethan. I recommend sending this crazy woman to a mental hospital to stop her from harming Dr. Ethan. Under this comment, tens of thousands of netizens followed, agreeing with it. In no time, the hashtag, "Please wake up Dr. Ethan and send the crazy woman to a mental hospital," topped the trending charts. My fingers hovering above the screen were shaking. Ethan's move was too ruthless. I couldn't think of any way to turn things around. I had just been reborn, and I didn't even have a chance to find evidence that they had already conspired together. Even if I jumped out now and exposed them, no one would believe me. They would only be more certain that I had a mental illness. And I had no relatives in this world. It would be easy for Ethan to send me to a mental hospital. If I went there, there would be no chance of escape. My hands clenched tightly, my sharp nails piercing my skin. What should I do? "If you're obedient, I will make your departure a bit less painful." Clara raised her eyebrow at me, her eyes full of malice. I called his name, staring straight at him. "Ethan, is this what you want as well?" He paused for a moment, turned back, his eyelashes lowered. "I'm sorry, Hazel, I can't lose Clara." "You can't lose her, so you're going to use my life to compensate?" I screamed at him hysterically. Ethan avoided my gaze, remaining silent. In Clara's mocking gaze, I gradually calmed down. I looked at Ethan and said softly, "Let me see Grandma one last time." After a pause, I added, "I won't say anything to Grandma. Even if I do, it won't change my ending, will it?" Ethan hesitated, looking at me for a long moment. In the end, he agreed. Before leaving, Clara turned back to me, giving me a victorious smile. Ethan was quick to act. In less than 2 days, he had brought Grandma over. The old woman's eyes reddened as soon as she saw me. "Girl, what happened? How did you get so hurt?" She walked unsteadily to the bedside, reached out to take my hand, and asked me, choking with emotion, "Hazel, what happened? Did Ethan not take good care of you?" My emotions, which had been tense all this time, suddenly completely collapsed. I hugged Grandma, crying and crying, unable to speak, unable to catch my breath. I cried until my limbs were weak, on the verge of passing out. Grandma was the best person in the world to me. Although she lived in her old house in the countryside because she was not used to city life, she remembered the things I loved to eat, remembered my period pains, and always sent me things at regular intervals. But after all, Ethan was her grandson. Would she help me? I dared not gamble easily, but besides Grandma, I couldn't think of any other way out. But what if she wasn't willing to help me? Hazel, you've been wronged, haven't you? Grandma suddenly spoke, interrupting my thoughts. She looked at me earnestly, her calloused hand gently touching my face around my left eye. I might be old, but I haven't become stupid. Did that awful boy bully you? I've seen all the efforts you've made for Ethan over these years, all your understanding and filial piety. Hazel, although Grandma doesn't know what happened to you, but Grandma wants to tell you that no matter what happens, you'll always be my dearest Hazel, even if it's Ethan is no match for you. Grandma! My throat was choked, unable to speak. Grandma just patted me on the back gently. I sniffled as I explained everything that had happened. Beast! Grandma trembled with anger. How could my family produce such a beast? Grandma! Do you think I'm a confused old woman who can't tell right from wrong? Grandma's brow was furrowed, her eyes overflowing with sadness. How could he treat you like this? Grandma seemed lost in her memories, and after a long moment she spoke slowly. Back then, when that girl got sick, but Ethan didn't have any money, she didn't hesitate to go abroad with another man. After she left, Ethan knelt on the ground, begging me, and sold all the assets left by his parents. He started a business and, slowly he started to make progress. I thought he had long forgotten her, but I didn't expect that he would set his sights on you. Grandma held my hand, lowering her eyes. You're gentle, kind, and a good child. Our family has let you down, especially me, this old woman who has harmed you. I wiped away the endless tears and Grandma smiled as she touched my hair. Hazel, don't be afraid, Grandma will help you. After Grandma and I had calmed down, Ethan, supporting Clara, pushed the door open, followed by a crowd of people. There were reporters, influencers, and doctors from the mental hospital. I was immediately surrounded by flashing lights. Reporters shoved their microphones in front of my mouth. Miss Hazel, could you tell us if you really have delusions that people are trying to harm you? Miss Hazel, could you share the details and feelings of each delusion you've had? Miss Hazel, since you knew you were different from ordinary people, why did you still choose to get married? One question after another bombarded me. I was just about to speak. Because she hates me. Clara's soft voice came from behind the crowd. All eyes turned to her. When Clara caught my eyes, she backed away a few steps, pretending to be afraid. Then, with the reporter's questions, she tearfully leaned into Ethan's embrace and said, Hazel is just a third party who intervened in someone else's relationship. Back then, when I went abroad because of illness, she saw Ethan in the hospital and immediately fell in love with him. Then she started to pester him relentlessly. Even to get Ethan, she threatened Ethan's grandma's life and drugged Ethan so he would be forced to be with her. As she spoke, she covered her face and sobbed. Ethan is kind-hearted and responsible, so he took care of her all along. I didn't expect her symptoms to become increasingly severe, and already had seriously affected the lives of others. Reporters and influencers couldn't hide their excitement and asked me if what she said was true. Through the crowd, I looked at Ethan and Clara as they leaned on each other. The moment we made eye contact, I understood their goal. They wanted to be together legitimately. During this period, Ethan's popularity had been high, and his image as a devoted man was deeply rooted in people's minds. If I were sent to a mental hospital and they got together soon after, they would surely face backlash from the public. That's why they were putting on such a show. Seeing that I wasn't saying anything, the reporters turned their attention to Grandma next to me. Madam, is what this lady said true? Ethan stepped forward quickly, putting his arm around Grandma's shoulder. Of course it's true, right, Grandma? I noticed that he was putting a little extra force on Grandma's shoulder. Ethan's expression showed nervousness, but mostly certainty. He was sure that Grandma would stand on the side of her only grandson. Grandma looked at him, her eyes full of sadness. After a few seconds, she slowly said, It's all false, everything she said is false. Hazel is not sick either. You've all been deceived by them. The whole place erupted in an uproar. Ethan's confident expression froze. He looked at Grandma in disbelief and shouted urgently, Grandma, what nonsense are you talking about? Did Hazel threaten you? Say something. Even Clara ran over in a panic. Yes, Grandma, it must be that Hazel threatened you, right? Don't be afraid. So many people here can stand up for you, and Hazel wouldn't dare to mess around. Why are you all in such a rush? I stepped forward, pushed Ethan away, and put Grandma behind me. Then I faced the reporter's cameras and said seriously, from beginning to end, I haven't been sick, and I don't have anything called paranoia. Then why did you go crazy in the hospital? I raised my hand and pointed at Clara, speaking calmly. Because she has heart disease, and my heart is a perfect match for hers. Before the surgery, my husband, as my chief surgeon, did not check my injuries first. Instead, he coaxed me into signing an organ donation form. Ethan's face changed instantly. You're talking nonsense, you. How can anyone believe a mentally ill person? I raised my head, our eyes met. All I could see was the panic in his eyes. I curved my lips. Where did I say anything wrong? The reason you were with me was because you saw my medical records, right? Because your white moonlight and I both had the rare Rh-negative blood type, so after we were together, you pretended to care about me and got me checked up, but you were secretly checking if I was a match for Clara, weren't you? Ethan opened his mouth trying to speak, but I cut him off again. Don't be so eager to refute. I think the hospital should still have the records from back then. Ethan, I took a step forward, staring at him. I've already called the police, and I believe that the messages you exchanged with Clara will be very interesting. Then I pointed at my left eye, which was wrapped in gauze, and said word by word. Also, I think that doctors should be able to tell from the scalpel wound and other things, whether the injury was caused by external force or by myself. What do you think, Dr. Ethan? The tables had turned, and the reporters and cameras surrounded Clara and Ethan this time. Did you direct this whole act to murder Miss Hazel to take her heart? Some onlookers were also indignant. This is too vicious, truly a viper's heart. I actually sympathized with this dog of a man. I was truly blind. These two should die together. Clara was forced back, and her emotions suddenly turned violent. Shut your mouths. Why are you all slandering me? With that, she began to yell and rushed towards Grandma. And you damn old hag, why are you helping an outsider? With quick reflexes, I pushed her back. You and Ethan have come to this step because of your greed and your viper hearts. Clara's face was extremely pale, but she was speechless. At that moment, the sound of police sirens could be heard outside. Clara stared in disbelief. You really called the police? Without waiting for me to answer, she turned around and staggered out. But she was quickly caught by the police. At the moment she was taken away, she was still cursing at me. I turned my head and looked at the man beside me without a shred of emotion. You're next. The air froze for a moment. Ethan suddenly laughed. He looked at me, his laugh full of bitterness. When you do something wrong, you have to bear the consequences. Hazel, I'm sorry. I only ask you one thing. He paused, the hand hanging by his side clenched tightly, as if he dared not look at Grandma. After I'm taken away, can you take care of Grandma? I looked at him, neither agreeing nor refusing. But Grandma stepped forward at that moment. She stopped in front of Ethan, raised her hand and gave him a hard slap on the face. You did such a beastly thing. How can you have the face to ask Hazel to do something for you? The only thing you should do is reflect on your mistakes. Then stay away from Hazel and don't disturb her life anymore. I lowered my eyes. As Ethan was being taken away by the police, I called out to him. Seeing the anticipation in his eyes, I said frankly, the divorce papers will be given to you in a few days, remember to sign them. From a distance of a few meters, Ethan's back hunched slightly. His shoulders trembled for a while before he straightened his back and murmured, okay. Then, with his back to me, he suddenly said softly, Hazel, I loved you. My heart skipped a beat. The boundless emotion surged like a tidal wave, moving me to tears. Over the years, in the gentle moonlight nights, in the gaps between noisy crowds, in the daily care, in every moment we had looked at each other and smiled. Ethan and I had spoken many words related to love to each other. We had even seen each other as our support and salvation. My love back then had been sincere, passionate and wholehearted. What about him? I did not know. Maybe he had loved me, maybe he hadn't. But none of that mattered now. The past would turn into smoke and be forgotten. I needed to smile and welcome the new beginning that belonged to me. The end.